What's going on, Canisius High School community? It is Andy Deyell, your Vice President for Institutional Advancement, back with yet another episode of Conversations with Canisius, our regular web series where we visit with alums all over Buffalo, the country, and the world, really, and find out what they've been up to since their time at 1180 Delaware Avenue. I am joined today by a very special guest all the way from Venice, Florida, Mr. Tim Scanlon from the class of 1967. Tim, how are you today?
I'm doing terrific, Andy. Thanks for having me. I saw all the previous interviews you had. What a group, huh? You should be so very proud. So very proud.
Absolutely. And one of them was your brother, Tom, class of 64. Right. So you guys are the first brother combination to appear on Conversations with Canisius. And when I get into it, I know we can interview some other of your family members because, Tim, you are one of three generations of gentlemen to come through Canisius High School. Your father, a graduate of the class in 1928, I believe.
That is correct.
Your nephew, Chris, a graduate of the class of 1989. And of course, you have your brother, Jack, from the class of 70, and your brother, Tom, who we just mentioned, from the class of 64. So three generations of Scanlons, all doing amazing things. And most recently, you were the retired Vice President of National Accounts for the Genzyme Corporation, which is a big biotech firm that was located since acquired, but located in Boston, Mass. And we'll get a little bit into that as we go. But take me back to, let's see, 1963. You're an eighth grader. Tell me a little bit about where you were in middle school and how you found out about Canisius High School.
Sure. Well, let's take the last question first. As you mentioned, my dad was class of 1928, and he was the president, actually, of the Canisius alumni.
Wow.
And it was sort of, my brother say it was at birth that we were sort of destined to go to Canisius High School. I defer. I think it was at conception that we were destined to go to Canisius High School. Yeah, and just anecdotally, there's my Aunt Elizabeth used to take those home movies. There was no videos back when I was a little kid.
Right.
And there's one movie, my sister Mary Margaret had them put onto video, saw it many years later, where my brother Tom, who you just mentioned, were riding our tricycles into our backyard on Lowell Road in Kenmore, parked the tricycles, you know how those home movies were, and then we walked towards the camera. On both of our t-shirts, it said, Canisius, 19, question mark. So I think conception rather than birth is a much more apt description of why I was predestined to go to Canisius High School. But yes, I went to St. Andrew's School in Kenmore, and most of the kids there, boys and girls, went to O'Hara. Some of the girls went to the Mount St. Mary's all-girls school. And I was the only kid to go to Canisius High School. So, like I said, there was never any question where I was going to school, but you know, it was different. You know, so there you go. I followed my brother Tom, and took the Delaware 25 bus, going south every day to Canisius High. Some days my father drove, but that's how I ended up at Canisius High School, and I consider myself extraordinarily lucky.
And tell me a little bit, Tim, about some of your big influences there on the faculty. When you were at Canisius.
Probably the most important part of Canisius, I thought, still think, were some of the teachers that we had. You know, start off, Connie McGillicuddy, who, as we all know, was the director of athletics and the basketball coach, was a terrific Latin teacher. He made it so interesting. Connie McGillicuddy is one of the reasons why I think I'm one of the 3% of kids who actually enjoyed Latin, because I don't think you have to take it 4 years anymore. We had to take it 4 years back then. My older brother Tom and I, Jack, my younger brother, I don't think he had to. Anyways, he was a terrific teacher. He was a great coach, and he brought energy and interest. I enjoyed Latin. Another guy that comes to mind right out of the chutes was Mr. Palisano, phenomenal math teacher. Also taught history, which is interesting about Canisius High School. Sometimes you had guys teaching the arts and some guys teaching the sciences, math. And Palisano was one of those guys. He was a terrific math teacher. And he just, again, another guy, like all the teachers, I think, at Canisius, all the good teachers, he approached every day with energy. And he was hell-bent. You were going to know math when you left his classroom on the very last day of the year. He was terrific. Bob O'Connor, Mr. O'Connor, he was my geometry teacher in my sophomore year. Another guy, he was my JV basketball coach, and he was a terrific teacher. Another guy, a lot of energy, just again, a coach as well as a teacher, super guy. Father Bartlett comes to mind. He was a terrific English teacher, Shakespeare, he made Shakespeare come alive. He was terrific. He went on to some great things, I think, at Fordham University. He was destined to do wonderful things. Father Rohr taught trigonometry and religion, another guy that kind of bridged the gap between the sciences and the humanities. Another guy who didn't teach me, but he was a guidance counselor. An extraordinarily good guidance counselor, and he became a friend of mine later in life, is Ron Hastrider. Terrific gentleman, and very level-headed, kept you on track, super dude. And you can't talk about Canisius faculty without talking about Father Sturm, okay? Father Sturm, in my years, and maybe even today, I mean, he was Canisius High School. He was obviously, by the title, prefect of discipline. He did a terrific job keeping us all in line. We were all bursting out in our adolescence at that age, and sure. Having been a dad, it's tough to keep them in the lines. But Father Sturm, just one little anecdote about Father Sturm. One Sunday morning, I was studying for a Latin test. I think it was my sophomore year or whatever. I forgot my book, left it in my locker, forgot my Latin book. So I went downstairs, asked my dad, can I have bus fare? Take the lower bus down to Canisius High, I forgot my book. And he said, well, you know what, I'll drive it. Okay, long story short. Drives me to Canisius High School, I get out of the car, run into my locker, get the book, come out, and who's talking with my father? Because my father was active in Canisius High School. Everybody knew him. Who's talking with my father but Father Sturm? My dad's still in the car. Father Sturm is looking in the car, laughing and joking with my dad. I can see that off in the distance when I'm coming back to the car. And I thought, like, wow, what a great opportunity, because Sturm is a tough guy. And I said, what a great opportunity. I think I'll just glom onto this, and I'll have Father Sturm will be my friend for the rest of my life at Canisius High. And he's laughing with my dad, and then he looks up from the car and he gets that furrowed brow. And he looks at me. How could you forget your book? It's like, I thought, okay, that plan's not going to work. I know my father was sitting in the car laughing. I couldn't see him, but he was prevented discipline that Sunday morning when I forgot my Latin book. So what a wonderful group. And then, you'd see Sturm later on, Father Sturm, excuse me, later on at some of the reunions, and he was your best friend. He was the perfect guy at the perfect time of my life. Just a terrific man. Great group.
And you mentioned earlier just the quality of the teaching. And I think one of the things that maybe supports that is, in 1987, 20 years after you graduated, I arrived as a freshman, and I had Ron Hastrader, and I had Jim Palisano, and I had Bob O'Connor, and I had Connie McGillicuddy. Those guys were all still there 20 years later, educating the next generation of Canisius High School students. So that is amazing. So,
and believe me, you're much better for it.
Absolutely. And so how about some of the lessons you learned while you're a student at Canisius? What are some of those takeaways that you brought with you into your, not only college career, but in your professional career?
Yeah. I think, just very basically, the quality of the academics they taught, they were superb. We'll talk about, I guess, what I did later on in life, but I spent the vast majority of my career in the medical field, not as a doctor. My younger brother Jack is an MD. I was in the sales marketing part of things, but yeah, just the quality of the academics. I mentioned Palisano with math, the Latin. Every now and then in my world, selling to clinical laboratories, you'd come across a Latin term or an anatomical term that people didn't know. I always felt superior to my colleagues when I told them I took 4 years of Latin and here's what that means.
That's right.
And so the academics were terrific. I think, I think today the Jesuits are kind of known for critical thinking, thought discipline. Turn things every which way, flip them upside down. What's this mean? What does that mean? Understand all points of view, and time management. Boy, that was an important part, especially when you were playing sports. Just keeping things, keeping things in sight, your eyes on the prize, and knowing that this is what you got to do to attain that, and that involves some time management. And I think one more thing that I think it's part of the brand of Canisius, but I'm not sure. You can probably say it better than I can. It should be part of your brand. I mentioned I went to St. Andrew's School. I was the only kid in my class who went to Canisius High School. But you think about, I took that bus down Delaware Avenue, arrived at Canisius, Delaware Avenue, and kids from the Italian kids from the West Side. I'm not sure these ethnic groups still exist. I've been out of Buffalo for more than 50 years, but you'd have the Italian kids from the West Side would come in. Wonderful. South Side Irish. I'm Irish. Identified. East Side. The Polish kids at that time came in from the East Side. And then maybe the North Side and the suburbs, maybe the more well-to-do kids, but you had this wonderful gamish right there on Delaware Avenue. Now, everything I see on social media is where Canisius is now reaching out to the inner city. This is wonderful. Yeah. You asked what I took with me. One of the jobs I had was at Continental Can Company. I worked in a plant on the south side of Chicago. I used to walk through the plants, see all the workers sweating. There's no air conditioning plants. And I'm like, those are the parents of the kids that I went to high school with. Some of these kids were going to be they might have been first generation high school for all I know, but they were certainly first generation college, a lot of these kids. So, you got these varying backgrounds. Canisius was wonderful for that. And I'm not disparaging, other Catholic high schools around the city. I mean, they all have a wonderful mission and they accomplish it, I think, very well. But that was something really unique about Canisius that I think needs to be ballyhooed perhaps a little more.
That's great. It's a great answer. And after Canisius High School, tell us a little bit about your college experience, and then from there, take us into your career in sort of the biotech field and
Sure.
how you moved around and built such a long and varied career in different places.
Yeah, moved around, I think, is a good thing. After Canisius High, I think we had about, I think it was close to 50% of our class went to Canisius College. We were perhaps the last generation or next to last generation, what we call day hops. Get on the bus and go to college.
Right.
Today, my kids wouldn't have ever thought of something like that. No. I'm going to live in the dorm and do all the wonderful college things. Anyways, so I went to Canisius College 4 years and got a degree in business, concentrated in marketing. And right after that, I went to the University of Buffalo and got the MBA. And there I kind of transitioned over to finance and accounting just to keep things kind of varied. Subsequent to that, my very first job, I think I just alluded to it a second ago, I was a assistant plant controller for the old Continental Can Company's corrugated plant in Chicago. So I moved from Buffalo to Chicago. First one actually in my family who sort of flew the coop. but I relocated to Chicago. Great experience. I mentioned, the workers in the plant, all the backgrounds, and, learned the inner workings of business. I was, what, 23, 24 years old at the time. So yeah, it was fun. So then it just to keep things on track, then I ended up going over to the dark side. I went to Abbott Laboratories, great, still a phenomenal company. And I went in a roundabout fashion, went through finance again, but ended up in sales and marketing, which I think was a good move. I ended up in the diagnostics division. This is long about now, 1978. And we sold and marketed products to clinical laboratories, instruments, reagents, which are the chemicals that go along with the instruments, to determine various levels of various chemistries, blood chemistries, proteins, viruses, whatever. And that's where I just flourished. I felt I flourished anyways. I learned an awful lot. One of my avocations, I was never smart enough to go to medical school. Like I said, I got a younger brother, Jack. He was a smart one, and he became a physician. But I just loved it. I was a product manager, then I was a sales manager on the West Coast. This is a time in that business where you had a convergence. Computers, microprocessors were coming in a very big way, the late 70s, early 80s. And there were a lot of discoveries in the world of clinical chemistry. The immunoassay, a Nobel Prize was won for that. If you or a loved one were tested for COVID, that was an immunoassay. Probably, it could have been a number of different things, but probably the rapid test is an immunoassay. Subsequent to that, there was PCR, which is the gold standard for COVID, but it's gold standard for a lot of different things. So you had this wonderful convergence. So the learning curve in the clinical lab was going like this. And it was just we were the first, Abbott Labs was the first to come out with the HIV test. And I think it was 1984. HIV, probably remember, was a scourge.
Sure.
You needed to protect the blood supply because an awful lot of HIV was transfused from the blood supply. So we were the first ones to come out with that. On the West Coast, it was particularly rampant. I dealt with an awful lot of thought leaders. It was just a great time to be doing what the good Lord put me to do. And that was to work in that industry. And then I was promoted back into house as director of national accounts. And subsequently, I left and I ended up at, you just mentioned, at Genzyme Corporation, which is still in the same business, clinical labs, but they had a little genetic screening, and it was part of a biotech company. So it was a little different flavoring, but still much the same thing, doing a lot of, for lack of a better term, groundbreaking initiatives. Just again, a fun place, a terrific place to be. So that, in a nutshell, is what I did and where I am today.
Nice. And so when you look back on it all, right, you look back on Canisius and your time at the college, and then UB, and then your career, what was some advice you would give to some of our young alums today who are just, maybe starting their college career or starting their professional career, some wisdom you could pass along to the young people today?
Yeah. I like to, sometimes when you see these graduation speakers, they get very amorphous, little boats going out to the sea of life. I won't do that. I won't do that to them. But I guess two things. And I don't want this to sound negative, but I just told you what I did for the vast majority of my career. We'd go into pathology labs to hospitals and say there was a discovery last month or whatever that's going to turn your world upside down. You got to change. And that's what we did. I mean, for a big chunk of my career, we were trying to change people's habits in the laboratories. And you're doing this with pathologists, with doctors. Not always easy. They're smarter than you are, and usually they were. So, we're trying to sell change. Now, my advice is, okay, that's what we did. You can't be afraid of change. You, the change agent, can't be afraid of change. I'm old enough. I was around when email came in, when all these Microsoft, what we're doing right now, all these Microsoft applications, Excel, Word. And I remember my colleagues, some of my people that reported to me, I don't want to, I've always hand wrote it out and given it to the secretary. Or, I like the calculator, adding things down and across. But I said, you got this marvelous Excel worksheet. Why are you so afraid to use it? So, and then, the next day they'd have to go out and tell a pathologist or a lab manager, you got to change. Well, yeah, you got to change too. So that's my first thing. Embrace these technologies. Don't turn your brain off. Okay. And I'm kind of still that way today. You buy a new car or whatever, it's got all these little gizmos on it. I probably use half of them, but whatever. I'm not afraid. I like to embrace the change. And again, I'm trying to get down and dirty and practical with these young alums. New stuff is good. Okay, yeah. For the most part. Right. Not always, for the most part, whatever. And I say the second thing, and I had my old boss used to drill this into all his direct reports. I think it was very good advice. Take your job seriously, okay? Work hard. It may mean you have to go in on a Saturday. It may mean you have to work late, okay? Now, everybody knows that, right? You got to work hard at what you do. You work hard at what you do. But the other part of it is, take your job seriously, but don't take yourself terribly seriously. And by that, I mean, have a sense of humor, okay? Sure. You can keep your eyes on the prize. You can still have an excellent mission statement, but have some fun, okay? When your colleagues see that you are having fun, cracking a joke every now and then, laughing, and still getting the job done, that's what I think you want in an organization, and probably in your personal life, in life as well. So take your job seriously, have a sense of humor, don't take yourself terribly seriously. And I think practical effects, those two things, I think they've helped me.
Well, I love the idea of keeping your brain going, right? Keeping your brain active. Yeah. And embrace new things. And, for somebody that's been retired now for a few years, we've talked a lot about the past, but what about the future? What are Scanlon's future goals? What are you trying to do in the near future?
I think I've told you, I'm an avid golfer. I play 3 days a week. That's my passion right now. I'm 72. I would love to be able to say I'm going to shoot my age someday, but probably a low probability. I don't know when my ability and my age are going to converge on that point. That in geometry that Mr. O'Connor taught us. That point of inflection, whatever. So that's my path. That's what I do a lot of. Now, in addition to that, I got two wonderful kids. Mary, my wife, and I have two great kids. Jessica, who works for Converse. Chuck Taylor All-Stars, Connie McGillicuddy's favorite shoe. Okay. And my daughter is unlikely. She's in marketing for that group. They're owned by Nike, is FYI. And she's terrific. And I have a son, Brendan. He's married to my daughter-in-law, Andrea. And they're both, Brendan was a biotech major, and he's in operations for a large pharma company, Sanofi. And his wife, Andrea, works for Moderna, who, as everyone knows, makes the vaccine. She was actually at Moderna long before the whole COVID thing transpired. So they consume a big chunk of our time. We like to, and we have with the kids. We've traveled, I'd say, fairly extensively. We've been to the Grand Canyon as a family. We've been to London. We took a terrific trip through Italy a few years ago. And I'd like to do that again. Unfortunately, COVID has put kind of the kibosh on that, at least for the time being. But I think once all this stuff settles, we'll be back doing that again. I like to read. My wife and I are supporters of the symphony down here. Again, don't turn your brain off. I like to read. I'm kind of a nonfiction guy. I'm reading a book right now, Abraham Lincoln and the Irish, and his special relationship with the Irish, who at that time were not terribly well thought of. But Lincoln thought a great deal of the Irish. So, anyways, I don't want to get too far afield. But those are the things that kind of consume me. I try to do something physical every day. I go to the gym. I ride my bike. I play golf, as I mentioned. So those are the things. I'm enjoying retirement, Andy.
Well, one of the things that you didn't mention that I know about is you're also working with your brothers and your nephew to endow a scholarship for
Yes.
at Canisius High School to make sure that other younger generations have the same opportunities
Right.
that you have to give a little bit of what you got. And it's a really wonderful thing to be able to get together with family members and plan something to make sure that there is a Canisius High School education there and available for a future generation. So I thank you for that.
Well, Andy, it's this is your idea. You approached. Well, it was really. I don't know that my brothers and I ever thought of it, but you approached my brother Tom, who also lives down here in Venice. Tom called me. I called Jack, and Christopher, our nephew. He showed up and participated as well. So we're all. I think it says. It says we're all very proud Canisius High Crusaders. Love the experience there. I love the thought, and I'm going to, as you and I have discussed, I'll leave it up to Canisius as to who the recipients of the scholarship is. I love the thought, though. I mentioned earlier the backgrounds of the kids who went to Canisius. I'm thinking it's probably not a hell of a lot different today, maybe a little bit. But I love the thought of perhaps somebody, a young man who comes from a family who might have a hard time affording the tuition at Canisius. It's always been, and that's okay. It's always been a premium tuition. But I love the thought of being able to help somebody like that out. I know my brothers do too.
Well,
so that's our. And I bet you the motivations behind all those people that are on scholarships at the high school. They all think the same way.
You have 2/3 of your.
You're just real proud of it.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
I was going to say 2/3 of the student population is receiving some type of financial aid or scholarship, and you're right, it is a premium tuition, but it's worth it, and it takes our alumni to continue to provide a tremendous amount of access to the school for the entire population of Western New York, regardless of where they live and what.
Well, Andy, as a marketing guy. It's an old adage, but price is the best guide to quality. Okay, not always, but most of the time.
Right. Sure.
And so, and I hope Canisius stays that way. It's you need to show the value. It's a terrific value proposition.
Well,
I think that's what all. Go ahead, Andy.
Sorry, I was going to say your family will help make sure that that's the case, and we appreciate it.
Proud to do so, pal. Proud to do so.
Thank you so much for spending a few minutes with us today and just giving us sort of a brief look back at your story. I think it's fantastic. I love talking to one of the benefits of my job is I get to hear stories from generations of Canisius gentlemen about the impact the school has had, and your family certainly no different. A really great opportunity to get to know you, and now I get to share you and your story with the rest of our community. So thank you so much for joining us for the few minutes today, and we look forward to what's ahead, not only for you, Tim, but the rest of the Scanlon crew.
Thanks so much, Andy. It's been a real pleasure.
We'll talk soon. Thanks.
Thanks, pal.
Bye, Tim.